Welcome to The Human Lens, the podcast that looks at the world through the perspective of human rights.
I'm Nathan.
I'm Sofia.
And I'm Deysi.
All right, so today's topic is going to be human trafficking in Mexico. Sophia, why don't you start us off? I know you've been doing a little digging for context, so.
Yes, Mexico has always struggled to deal with crimes such as drug trafficking, human trafficking, and weapon trafficking. A little more recently, though, in the year 2000, Mexico elected President Fox, and although people expected him to create an effective national security strategy, partly due to political infighting between his administration and the Mexican Congress, he was unable to implement such strategy during his 6-year-long term.
Okay, so how about the acts of Felipe Calderon? Have you read anything about him?
Oh yeah, so in 2006, Felipe Calderon was elected as president. He fought against the drug cartel, crime, corruption, and announced the comprehensive strategy for preventing and combating crime in 2007. This did help a bit bring down the amount of organized crime that occurred in Mexico.
Yeah, it is widely known that the police force is corrupt, but we wonder why people think it's corrupt.
So the systematic problems regarding recruitment, supervision, and effective internal investigation and low wages is linked to why there's a lot of corruption in the police force, which is why around 80% of the population considers the police force as corrupt.
So, do you know why trafficking is so big in Mexico?
Violent drug trafficking is constantly being dealt with in Mexico, partly due to the warlordism and cases of ungoverned territories. And it has extended to other crimes such as human trafficking, weapon trafficking, extortion, bribery, etc. That being said, people are usually tricked or threatened into being trafficked into the different types of trafficking like sex trafficking, forced labor, forced marriage, unlawful child custody transfer, forced surrogacy, recruitment of child soldiers, harvesting of organs and other human parts, etc.
So that leads me into something that I've been researching actually. And what I've been researching is essentially women in human trafficking circles in Mexico. And I found that women are often subject to essentially new forms of modern slavery, whether it be forced sex or just forced labor in general. And I found that this actually directly violates Article 5 from the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights.
And what is Article 5?
Oh, yeah, so Article 5 is basically, it basically states that no one shall be held in slavery or servitude, and that slavery and the slave trade is completely prohibited in all their forms, which is obviously not being upheld in Mexico as of now.
So human trafficking in Mexico is a complex issue.
And why is that?
It's deeply rooted in the systemic challenges and exacerbated by organized crime.
What factors contribute to human trafficking?
Some of the primary factors that contribute to human trafficking in Mexico is a widespread poverty and significant income disparities. Organized crime groups have expanded their activities to include human trafficking. These groups often use violence to maintain control over trafficking routes and victims.
So, how does the law come into play in all this, or do they just stay passive throughout these occurrences?
Well, even when trafficking cases are reported, bringing perpetrators to justice can be challenging due to limited resources and systemic issues within the legal system.
So, as mentioned before, women are the ones who are most likely targeted, right?
Yes, women and girls are particularly vulnerable due to societal norms and gender-based violence, which increases their risk of falling victim to trafficking. People who are seeking better opportunities may fall prey to traffickers who promise them employment or migration assistance.
Man, I can't imagine what that would be like. I feel like the trauma from that experience would have haunted me for a couple years.
Yeah, in fact, the trauma experienced by victims often results in ongoing mental health challenges such as depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, which complicates their recovery.
Earlier, I mentioned that people believe that the government is corrupt. Could this mistrust in the government possibly affect the way victims go about getting help?
Well, when traffickers are not held accountable, it diminishes public trust in authorities and the justice system, which makes it harder for victims to seek help.
Okay, so now that we've semi-explained the main issue with human trafficking in Mexico, Sophia, do you have any way we could possibly resolve this?
So, some potential solutions I've come up with to this problem could be to have the Mexican government create more legislations, policies, and organizations to limit the trafficking of humans, drugs, and weapons. That being said, it could be difficult considering Mexico has dealt with a lot of corruption in the government in the past, and it would probably be very expensive.
And if we can't get the government to change or create new legislation, like you said?
Well, there could also be programs that help protect the victims of human trafficking and provide them with resources.
So on a little tangent, I actually found another article that I think suits this. It's an article called Nothing But Bones. It's essentially just an article containing a bunch of interviews from the families of human trafficking victims, at least victims who have disappeared trying to cross the U.S.-Mexico border. And within the article, I actually find that, two more articles are violated.
And what articles are those?
So the articles I found were Article 5, which states that no one shall be subject to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment, and Article 6, which states that everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law.
So how is Article 6 violated?
So Article 6 is essentially, it's violated because in the interviews, many state that often the Border Patrol and police, both for the Mexican and the American side, don't really go into much depth or really look into missing people cases. They often see them as just people who've gone missing rather than people victims of human trafficking.
So, how does this relate to the potential solution?
Well, Article 5 is essentially just it essentially relates to what we said earlier, because like the creation of new legislation, all of that stuff will help prevent like cruel treatment. However, Article 6 is not really applicable to our solution, because the creation of new laws and legislations won't really help if people are not being recognized by the law to begin with.
And that's all the time we have for today. Until the next time, bye.